wanted to respond to the Pete Hegseth and the President of the United States, their address to the military leaders that occurred just recently. And listen, I've never served in the military, so I'm really reluctant to talk about this. I sat on it yesterday and thought about it. Watched some people, and I have some very serious concerns about what was said yesterday as I record this and what they spoke about. And I was going to clip it up and all that, but I just didn't feel like doing all that. But there was some really some dangerous things that I think that they were said, and I think that I have some concerns about it. Now, from the perspective of of a police officer in a male-dominated space, I can understand a lot of the things that we're saying. We got to get our troops and I would say the police as well. You got to get them in shape. I don't think there was anything wrong with that. I actually thought that Pete Hegseth gave a very good speech. More than likely well rehearsed. I'm sure he had some cue cards up to remind him of some things, but I thought he actually gave a pretty good speech. I, like many other people and pundits and all that, have some concerns. I can't get my lighting right in here. I don't know what's up with that, but have some concerns. I am concerned about number one, being a black man. What is going on here? We stopped here. I am concerned about the dress code, the hair code. Everybody's got to be clean shaven. I know that there has been a lot of work, a lot of lawsuits filed about that, and about men's, in particular black men, have had to complain about that, right, and get these medical exemptions, and they want to work with people for a year. I was reading this on New York Times. Work with people for a year and see what they can do, and it's about shaving techniques and all this stuff. And you're gonna kick people out the military because they can't shave, or ask them to resign because they can't shave, or deal with razor bumps. And one thing that one of the persons, or one of the generals, or one of the spokesmen, let me put it like that, from the military, said was, if they don't want to shave, then they can get laser surgery. So you're gonna scar up your face with lasers in order to stand in uniform. Just all kind of craziness, right? So there was a lot of work done. Man, I can't get my lighting right here. There was a lot of work done concerning making sure that African Americans, those of African descent, can have a place within this man's army, and it just seems to be being undone. I also have a concern about the warfighter ethos that they're going to be going forward, to hunt, to kill, destroy, to lethality, taking off the shackles, if you were. I don't have the exact phrase. All right, I had to pause it for a minute there. To the warrior ethos, right? Their philosophy about going forward, and it sounds like they're gonna, totally outdo or undo the Geneva Conventions and all this other stuff. Talking about, just hunting down and these restraints that we put on our warriors and for them to do battle. And I just don't understand. I don't understand any of that talk. I don't understand any of that talk from the perspective of international justice, of due process, right? And this has become evident in I think that what they shoot down, like three fishing boats allegedly. And if they do have some ideas in Venezuela, the Venezuelan boats there, if they do have some idea that these people were nefarious or selling drugs or whatever, why not capture them, interrogate them, and get to the source, right? Just engaging in summary executions. You know what? I'm gonna go for a walk. Just engaging in summary executions is just a heinous act, and war crimes and all this other stuff, right? So I'm just not with that. And what I wanted to impress upon this and the other things he said, here's the thing. Here's something else that was really, really troubling to me. Again, my degree, my background, my education is in leadership, right? So again, I have a PhD in leadership, and that means leadership theory. What does it take to motivate your troops? What does it take to keep them engaged, right? And it seems to me that they're adopting high authoritarian style. But of course, a lot of other people have said that as well, where it's our way or the highway. But that doesn't you don't get productive troops out of that. Any leadership theorist will tell you that that is the least productive way to get the best out of your people, your personnel, and your troops, right? So I have a problem with the new leadership style of, our way or the highway. You either like it or love it, right? And again, you don't get the best out of them. The firing. Another thing I have is the firing or the removing of people, for so-called DEI purposes, unless it has under application that they were DEI hire. How do you know that they were, right? How do you know that they were? How do you know that people were promoted based on their race and not on merit? It's so obvious to me that if you hire someone who is black or a woman, and they automatically have this uphill battle that they have to fight in order to get to that position. So they're more than likely well qualified because they know that they're a woman, they're not accepted in certain places. They know because they're a black man, Hispanic man, whatever, that they're not that they are not seen as qualified to be in these particular positions. So therefore, so them removing all these different generals and admirals or whatever, it's fine. I guess it would be fine to fire them if they said, listen, what you're about to plan, I don't get along with that. I'm not going along with that. Okay, then you got to fire them because you got to do whatever. But just firing as in how he was saying, that just firing just because we think that they were DEI or because there's a presumption that just because they're of a certain color. And again, if you're just going to hire on merit, it always seems to me, and always seems to us black folks, that if merit always just means white, right? Because there's always this presumption of this is who should get it. This is the presumption as to who should be in these positions, in these spots, and this is how people should think. And if you don't think along these lines, or you don't believe along these lines, or you don't look along these lines, then you must somehow be somewhat different. And that's just not the case. You want the most qualified people in these positions, and those qualified people are people who could be of color, right? So it just, remove everybody, shaving standards, remove women. They don't want women in combat, which I got to be honest, I'm not going to front about that. I actually kind of agree with that. You want someone. I wanted to stand next to, as a police officer, I stood and wrestled next to and got into situations, and I wanted to know that the person who was coming to back me up was able to carry me out of there if I was injured, and I would be able to carry them out of there if they were injured, right? You don't want, so that is a thing. I hate to break it to a lot of people, but that is a thing that the men think about when they are in situations. And listen, so we just want the same thing when you're in these trenches with people in the military, right? You got to be able to get people out of there. You got to be able to evacuate. What I don't like about this, what they didn't mention, and this has been brought up by a number of other, pundits who have vastly more knowledge than I, about, the future of warfare, right? And the future of warfare is not going to be hands on the ground, hand-to-hand combat. It may come down to that, but most of it is going to be drones, right? I read a book by a Russian author. I can't remember the name of the book. But, just talking about the future of warfare, and it's not going to be hands-on, right? It's not going to be that way, right? We're talking about drones and cyber warfare and cyber attacks and attacks on an energy grid. Electricity is shut off and all this other stuff, right? You got to also be concerned about biological and obviously nuclear, but biological and viral threats, and so the nature of warfare has changed so much that you have to be concerned and have an eye on that. And they didn't address any of that. So again, I want I think our police should be in shape, and I think that our people, leaders should be in shape. I didn't have an issue with that, as long, meeting height, weight requirements. And if you're going to be in combat roles, you got to meet a certain metric. I don't have a problem. I really don't have a problem with that. Leadership, being able to, walk through the halls and not be, walk through the halls of the Pentagon and not be fat is certainly a plus. So I don't have a problem with that. I think it's irrational to ask these higher up leaders to work out on their days off. Excuse me, on their days on, to do PT, strong PT. I think that's. I don't think that's going to last. Yeah, none of these guys got to get up extra early, get their workout in. You know, I wouldn't mind that. Maybe let them work out after work or whatever, or work out with other people. But, yeah, I don't think that all that's going to last. I do agree that they ought to just get it in and maybe, watch their diets and stuff and do the PT twice a year. I don't have an issue with that. But I was just concerned. I'm concerned as a U.S. citizen about the way, the path that we're going, the trajectory that we are on as a nation. Building trust is important for leaders, and there are reasons. All the things that he wants to, that Pete Hegseth wants to strip away. No more, taking the shackles off of leaders for better terms, right? No more anonymous complaints. No more multiple complaints. Sexual assault and racism are huge components in the service there, right? And I'm saying that in a negative way, right? They are almost a part of the culture there. And you got to stamp that out. No woman wants to join the service and be sexually harassed. They don't want to be sexually assaulted. No man wants to be in a unit. No black man, no Hispanic man, no Asian man wants to be in a unit and then, and have these ideas continually creeping up along the way that they are inferior, that they can't do it, and dealing with the racist jokes. I'm just concerned about how that looks. So all these things about taking away their no more anonymous complaints. Well, leaders retaliate. Leaders retaliate. And if you complain about me, the next thing you know, you're doing extra PT, or you're passed over for an assignment, or you're this or you're that, right? There's other ways of disciplining someone. You're shunned. You don't get put in for recommendations. You don't get put in for medals. You don't get put in for medals. You miss out on a whole lot. So therefore, they put in these systems, right? All these systems that were built up, they might not like them, but they were all built up and built around a premise that the streamlined, straight place to where complaints were made were not taken seriously, were pushed in the pile. They would reassign leaders and not take it seriously, or give them a slap on the back, or even a slap on the wrist and say don't do it again. Meanwhile, they do it again because they know there's no repercussions. They make reassignments, right? So there was a lot of work done to make sure that these things didn't happen. Now, Peter Hegseth did address the racism and sexual harassment are wrong, illegal since 1948 or 47, whatever he said. But I mean, you got to be vigilant and on that, and really make some strict, harsh rulings, precedents, punishments, in order to stop people from continuing. Otherwise, they will continue. And it's because they continue that they had to institute some anonymous things. And if you just base it on merit, base promotions based on merit, whatever that means, right? Does that mean you drink with the right person? Does that mean that the person liked you? Does that mean that you slept with this person? What does that mean, right? You got to really have an established core about that. Again, I never served. I'm not in those echelons, so I can't tell you about what that means. But I can tell you from a police world, right? I can tell you from that world, from that realm, and anybody could tell you. It's not about what you know. It's about who you know, and we know. The literature is rife with the people will hire people, will promote people who are more similar to them. Oh, you're of Irish descent. You're of the Catholic faith. Whatever. They're going to look at you first. And black folks are the most dissimilar of all people, right? We're still part of the human family. It's crazy. You got to say this stuff, right? But we're, as far as physical features, we're the most dissimilar. And so they look at it somehow as the exact opposite. And so if you got a person who grew up with this mentality, who becomes a supervisor, becomes a higher ranking officer, and then is only promoting white Catholics, let's just say white male Catholics, Protestant females, LGBT and African American and Asians and Hispanics, and everyone else is not getting any promotions, what do you do about that? And he can always just say, well, it's just merit. It's about this, about that. So, we've done a lot of work to eliminate racism, but it's such a fragile thing. And I think that this is kind of a slow erosion back to the old days. I have that concern. I have that concern. So, um, yeah, I have that concern. So, I was very concerned about the warrior ethos, our rules of engagement. I'm concerned about uh, I'm concerned about racism creeping its head back in, what it takes to get promoted, what it takes for people to want to join in the first place, right? Why would you join an organization and they're gonna make me shave? I can't shave every day. Why would I join an organization where the drill sergeants can put hands on me? They're not gonna want to deal with that. You know, they're not gonna want to deal with that, and they're gonna get a certain type of person who's gonna want to deal with that. And also, this organization as well, Department of War. I'm not happy about that name change either. But the Department of War now, right? Their attitude about restoring the names of these Confederate generals and all that, which is crazy to me. These people are traitors. God. What else did they do? Yeah, just you were talking about being unity and one flag and all this kind of stuff. But then you got to stamp out the racism. To me, you got to stamp out the Confederate flags that are often flown at these different places. You got to stamp all that out and be aggressive about it. So I am concerned about that. I am concerned about the speech. I didn't even watch the president's speech, so I knew it was going to be a rambling mess of hot garbage. We all knew that. And then at the press conference before that, Pete Hegseth's going to have all these different people there. He was asked about it. The president was. Oh yeah, it was. He acted like he didn't know about it. He knew about it. Come on, man. Come on. He knew about it. And then, of course, what I didn't mention before is everybody was mentioning about how he gathered, over 800 of the top personnel in one building. How that is not a recipe for a disaster, to do. I hope that he doesn't make that a thing regularly and routinely. But, I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your opinion. I just want to kind of rant about this. I'm concerned. I'm concerned about this guy and his philosophy. I'm concerned about Pete Hegseth and his philosophy. Obviously, it's Trump philosophy. Oh, and also, I do know that Trump was, taking it out on the cities are going to be battlegrounds and practice arenas for the troops. What kind of statement is that? I should have led off with this. What kind of statement was that? What kind of president is going to send the troops in there to practice war fighting on your own citizens? But this tells you they don't think of them as their own citizens. They don't think of these people who live in these cities as their own citizens. They don't think that way. Don't ever be confused about that. They do not think that they are the citizens. So, really unfortunate. What's going on in Portland, what's going to go on in Chicago and other places. People got to continue to resist. They got to continue to resist. Lawsuits, whatever. But they are full speed ahead. They are full speed, full steam ahead, and they just don't care. It's really, really a shame. Really, really a shame. I had no intention of going for a walk today. I don't have my walking sneakers on, but I'm going to get it in. Do a rucksack walk today. All right. I just want to drop this, let you know my concerns. I'm concerned, and I don't think it's going to get any better. And we have 3 more years of this. I actually think I actually think that it's really bad, and we got a lot more years of this to go. It's not going to stop in 2020. What is that? 2026 midterms. No, going to be no midterms. What is this in my hat? No midterms, no re-election. I don't know what that is. Jeez. All right. Much love and peace.